Listen closely. Do you hear that? That's the sound of 1,000 text messages being typed and deleted. The modern prayer of the anxious heart. Each backspace a small death. Each unsent confession a ghost haunting the space between two phones, glowing in separate darknesses. There's an old Bavarian legend about a woodcutter who captured a forest spirit in a glass jar. Beautiful beyond description, she sang songs that made flowers bloom in winter. He kept her on his mantle, and every morning he'd wake to her ethereal music. But slowly, imperceptibly, like watching paint dry or love die, her songs grew quieter. Not because she was dying, no. Spirits don't die that easily, but because his ears, Upars, had grown accustomed to miracles. By spring, he couldn't hear her at all. She still sang, mouth moving behind the glass, but to him she had become furniture, background noise, a decoration gathering dust beside his grandfather's pocket watch. This is what we do to desire when we cage it with certainty. You see, hunger, real hunger, isn't about emptiness. It's about the space between the last taste and the next promise. It's the 3-day wait between her messages that makes your phone feel heavier in your pocket. It's the canceled date that makes the next meeting feel like a fever dream. The human heart, that Gothic cathedral of want, requires distance to maintain its architecture. Too close, and the flying buttresses collapse. Too far, and the whole structure freezes, abandoned. Picture this. 2 lovers in Prague, 1894. She, a pianist with consumption. He, a doctor who could cure her but won't. Not from cruelty, but from a terrible understanding. Her music has never been more beautiful than now, suspended between recovery and relapse. Each concert could be her last. The audience weeps not just for the Chopin nocturnes, but for the tremor in her fingers, the pause between movements where she catches her breath. He sits in the back row, knowing that her desire for life, for him, for one more tomorrow, is what makes her divine. The cure would kill the very thing he fell in love with. Not her, but her becoming. Modern psychology calls this intermittent reinforcement, the most powerful mechanism for creating addiction. Those 2024 studies from Stanford's Department of Behavioral Perversity, yes, and that's actually what they call themselves now, found that uncertain rewards trigger 400% more dopamine than predictable ones. The rat who gets cheese randomly will press the lever until its little paw bleeds. The woman who gets your attention unpredictably will check her phone 70 times before breakfast. But here's the grotesque beauty of it. She knows. Oh, she knows exactly what you're doing. Women have been playing this game since Penelope wove and unwove her tapestry, keeping suitors suspended in perpetual maybe. She recognizes the dance because she's been both dancer and choreographer. And the strangest part? She prefers it this way. The exhausting alternative, being possessed completely, is a kind of death. Ask any woman about the boyfriend who was too available, and watch her face contort with the memory of suffocation, disguised as devotion. Kierkegaard, that melancholic Dane who broke off his engagement to preserve his longing, wrote, "The most painful state of being is remembering the future, particularly the one you'll never have." But he was only half right. The most exquisite state is living in the eternal almost, where every moment threatens to be either abandonment or consummation, but never quite commits to either. I once watched a man train falcons in the Moroccan desert. The secret, he said, wasn't the food or the hood or the leather jesses. It was this. You must make the bird believe it's choosing to return. The moment it knows it's captured, it stops being a falcon and becomes a pet. So you release it. You let it soar until it's a speck against the sun. Your heart hammers knowing it might never return. But that's precisely why it does. Because you gave it the sky, and it chose your glove. This is the art. To be the gardener who waters just before the wilting point. The musician who holds the note just shy of resolution. The lover who leaves the room while she still wants you to stay. There's a couple in Tokyo who've been married 43 years. They maintain separate apartments in the same building. 3 nights a week, he might knock on her door. Sometimes she answers. Sometimes she doesn't. When asked about their secret, she laughs, a sound like wind chimes made of broken glass, and says, "We never stopped courting. He still doesn't know if I'll say yes." The velvet curtains in her apartment are always drawn just enough to suggest, never enough to reveal. The candle wax drips in patterns that could be accidents or messages. Everything is suspension, suggestion, the sweet agony of almost. Tell me something. When was the last time you wanted something you already had? No, really wanted it. With that chest-tightening, palm-sweating, 3 a.m. insomnia kind of want. You can't remember, can you? Because possession is where desire goes to die. Buried in the suburban cemetery of contentment, with a nice headstone that reads, "Here lies passion. It was comfortable." Every glance is currency, and bankruptcy is always one text away. Shh. Lean in closer. I'm going to tell you something that will ruin you for ordinary love. In 1923, a German cabaret dancer named Anita Berber would perform naked except for a necklace of cocaine and a live boa constrictor. But here's what made her unforgettable. She would choose one man in the audience each night, just one, and ignore him completely. While everyone else received her gaze, her chosen victim would sit in a spotlight of absence. By the end of the performance, that man would pay anything, promise everything, just for a single glance. Most would return every night for weeks, hemorrhaging money and dignity, chasing that acknowledgement that never came. She died at 29, but those men? They lived to 80, 90, still talking about the dancer who wouldn't look at them. This is the economy we're discussing, not love. Love is for peasants and poets. We're talking about attention, that narcotic more precious than time because it is time, crystallized and weaponized. You want to know the secret that pickup artists charge thousands to teach but never quite understand themselves? Here it is, free, whispered like a curse. The moment she knows she has your complete attention is the exact moment she stops needing it. It's not cruel, it's thermodynamics. Energy flows from hot to cold, from the one who cares more to the one who cares less, until everything reaches the same tepid temperature of mutual taking for granted. There's a text message saved in 1 million phones right now. Hey. Just that. 3 letters holding a universe of possibility. The person who sent it is checking their phone every 43 seconds. The person who received it? They're letting it marinate, age like wine or revenge, because they understand that responding immediately would be like showing your cards in poker while the betting's still going. The gray check marks, read but unanswered, are the modern stigmata of desire. But here's where it gets deliciously perverse. In Helsinki, there's a restaurant where you eat in complete darkness, pitch black. Can't see your hand, your food, your companion. The waiting list is 3 months long. Not because the food is exceptional, it's decent Finnish fare, but because in that darkness, every word, every pause, every breath becomes amplified. Attention, stripped of its visual crutches, becomes pure. Couples leave either engaged or separated. There's no middle ground when you can't hide behind your eyes. The neuroscience is almost pornographic in its clarity. A 2024 study from the Karolinska Institute found that uncertain social rewards, a maybe, a perhaps, a we'll see, activate the same neural pathways as cocaine. But here's the part they don't publish in the journals. The withdrawal is identical too. That's why you check her Instagram story at 3:47 a.m., knowing she posted it for someone else, anyone else, everyone but you. You're not looking for her. You're looking for your next fix of possibility. Schopenhauer, that patron saint of pessimists, wrote about the porcupine's dilemma. Creatures who need warmth but wound each other when they get too close. He was almost right, but he missed the most important part. The wounds are the point. They're proof that something happened, that you mattered enough to leave a mark. Watch how she texts you. No, really watch. The enthusiastic messages come when you're distant. The one-word replies when you're eager. It's not a game. It's an algorithm older than language. She's maintaining homeostasis, keeping you at the exact distance where want doesn't become have, where hunger doesn't become satisfaction, where the spell doesn't break. I knew a man in Brussels who sent his wife one postcard every month for 30 years, even when he was home, even when they were in the same bed. The postcards said nothing profound: weather reports, descriptions of meals, observations about strangers. But he mailed them from different post offices, so they'd arrive unpredictably. She never knew when to check the mail with anticipation or resignation. She saved every one in a box she never opened. When he died, she found out he'd written them all in advance, 10 years worth, still arriving. She remarried within a year, but those postcards? Still coming, still unopened. The new husband doesn't understand why she smiles when she checks the mail. The mistake men make, the gravitational pull of this mistake, is thinking that more attention equals more connection. Like amateurs trying to fill silence with words, they text "good morning, good night, thinking of you, how was your day," until their presence becomes like fluorescent lighting, constant, harsh, and headache-inducing. They become emotional infrastructure, as romantic as plumbing. Meanwhile, the man who disappears for 3 days, then sends a single photo of a sunset with no explanation, his phone becomes a shrine. His silence becomes a canvas where she paints her anxieties and desires. His absence becomes more present than presence itself. There's a couple in Sao Paulo who've been together 7 years. They have a rule. They can only text each other using songs. No words, just Spotify links. The conversation takes days sometimes. Each song a move in a chess game of meaning. Sometimes one doesn't respond for a week, leaving the other suspended in the last chorus. They've never said "I love you" in plain text. They don't need to. The space between songs says everything. Here's what's truly sick about this whole dance. Everyone knows everyone knows. She knows you're rationing attention. You know she's calculating response times. You both know the other knows. It's mutually assured destruction, except instead of nuclear weapons, it's read receipts and active status indicators. And yet we all keep dancing. Because the alternative, genuine vulnerability, consistent presence, emotional availability, feels too much like death. Or worse, like marriage. So here's my question for you. You beautiful disaster reading this in the dark. When did you start believing that love meant giving yourself away? Who taught you that emptying yourself into another person was noble instead of just empty? To be caught is to die, but to never be suspected is to never have lived. There's a hum in the air tonight. Do you feel it? It's the frequency of 1,000 little deceptions vibrating through smartphone screens. Each one a perfect crime that wants, desperately, to be solved. In medieval Persia, There was a tradition among thieves. The master thief would always leave behind a single golden thread at the scene, invisible to casual observers but obvious to those who knew to look. It wasn't hubris. It was heartbreak. What good is a perfect crime if no one knows you're capable of it? What good is being unknowable if no one tries to know you? This is the paradox that destroys modern lovers. We perfect the art of mystery while dying to be discovered. She posts a photo at a wine bar. The caption is innocuous, something about much-needed night out. But look closer. The table is set for two. There's a man's watch just barely visible at the edge of the frame. She could have cropped it out. She chose not to. This isn't carelessness. It's breadcrumbs in a forest where she's both the witch and the lost child, the hunter and the hunted. You see, we've evolved past crude jealousy. That's for amateurs and teenagers. No, what we practice now is something far more sophisticated. The manufacture of productive uncertainty. It's not about making her jealous. It's about making her detective. Because a woman investigating is a woman investing. Every theory she constructs about who you were with, what you were doing, why you didn't answer, each one is a thread tying her tighter to the narrative of you. Let me tell you about a psychological experiment they won't teach in universities because the results were too disturbing. In 2025, researchers at the Institute for Romantic Dysfunction, yes, that exists now, had couples wear brain monitors during dinner. Half were told their partner had a secret. The other half were told nothing. The secret group showed 340% more neural activity in regions associated with attraction. But here's the sick part. When they revealed there was no secret, the attraction didn't disappear. It intensified. The hunt had become more real than the prey. Nietzsche wrote, "The irrationality of a thing is no argument against its existence, rather a condition of it." And he was talking about God, but he might as well have been describing the text that says, "Had fun last night," with no context, no explanation. Just 3 words that will keep her awake until dawn, constructing entire worlds of possibility. There's a woman in Copenhagen who's been married 4 times. Each husband thought he was the only one who truly knew her. She kept journals in different languages, Danish for one, English for another, French, German. Each journal told a different story of the same life. When she died, they found all 4 journals, but also a 5th, in Russian, that none of them could read. It's been 3 years. They still meet monthly, these 4 widowers, trying to decode who she really was. She's more alive in their speculation than she ever was in their arms. This is what we're really doing with our calculated silences and strategic revelations. We're writing novels where we're both author and protagonist, leaving chapters unfinished, forcing our readers to fill in the blanks with their own obsessions. But here's where it becomes truly Gothic. The man who perfects this art, the measured absence, the curated mystery, the selective attention, eventually faces a terrible realization. He's become so good at being unknown that he's forgotten who he was pretending not to be. The mask has eaten the face. The performance has replaced the person. I watched a couple at a cafe in Athens last summer. They sat in perfect silence for an hour. Not comfortable silence, strategic silence, each waiting for the other to break first, to reveal need, to show cards. They were so busy not being vulnerable that they forgot to be anything at all. 2 ghosts haunting each other's periphery, each convinced they were winning a game where the only prize was loneliness decorated as strength. A 2024 Stanford study on emotional withholding in intimate relationships found something that should terrify us all. The partners who were best at maintaining mystery reported the highest levels of what researchers called existential hollowing, the sensation that you're watching your own life from outside. like a movie you've seen too many times. The Japanese have a word, komorebi, for sunlight filtering through leaves. Beautiful, but only because the leaves are in the way. Remove the obstruction, and it's just harsh light. This is what we've done to intimacy. We've become so addicted to the filtering, the obstruction, the game of partial revelation, that direct connection feels like staring into the sun. There's a man in Montreal who sends his ex-girlfriend one playing card every year on her birthday. Started with the Ace of Hearts 12 years ago. She's married now, 2 kids, but she keeps each card in her jewelry box. Her husband has never asked about them. She's never explained. Last year was the Queen of Spades. 1 card left. They both know what happens when the deck runs out. Nothing. And that nothing is more terrifying than any confession. You want to know the real tragedy? It's not that we play these games. It's that we can't stop. We've become so fluent in the language of withholding that we've forgotten how to speak plainly. I miss you becomes hope you're well. I love you becomes take care. Don't leave becomes silence. The perfect crime isn't getting away with something. It's getting away with everything, including yourself, until you're so far gone that being caught is no longer possible because there's no one left to catch. So tell me, you beautiful criminal reading this with your guard up and your heart locked, what would happen if you let yourself be caught? Not captured, caught, seen, known, witnessed in all your spectacular damage. What if the real power isn't in being mysterious, but in being brave enough to be obvious? But you won't, will you? Because you're already composing the text you'll send 3 hours from now. Casual, distant, perfect. A golden thread in a dark room, waiting for someone to notice you're gone. Hope is the most exquisite poison. It tastes like tomorrow and kills you today. Listen, do you hear your heartbeat? That's not life. That's countdown. Every pulse is one less moment to waste on certainty. There's a casino in Monaco that doesn't use money. You gamble with promises. I'll call you tomorrow. We should get coffee sometime. Let's definitely do that. The house always wins because the currency inflates the moment it's spoken. By dawn, everyone's a billionaire of intentions worth nothing. The regulars know this. They come anyway. They're not gambling for the promises. They're gambling for the 30 seconds between the deal and the reveal when everything is possible. She texts you, "Maybe we could," and stops. 3 dots appear. Disappear, appear, disappear. For 17 minutes, you live in those dots. You age in those dots. You write your autobiography in those dots. Then, never mind. And then somehow, here's the sick part. Those 2 words are more intimate than any confession. Because now you're both suspended in the same maybe, breathing the same hypothetical air. The ancient Greeks had 2 words for time, chronos and kairos. Chronos is clock time, sequential, measured. Kairos is the supreme moment, the time between times, when the ordinary world cracks open and shows you infinity. Every maybe is kairos. Every will see is a door to forever. Every perhaps is a prayer to gods who feed on uncertainty. Let me tell you about something that happened in Vienna, 1907. A young artist named Egon Schiele fell in love with his model, Wally. For 4 years, she lived in the space between his "maybe I could love you" and "maybe I couldn't." She aged a decade in those 4 years. When he finally decided, chose another woman, someone appropriate, someone certain, Wally didn't cry. She laughed, because she realized she'd been more alive in his maybe than most people are in their definitely. This is what we don't understand about limbo. It's not a waiting room. It's a ballroom. A 2025 neuroscience study from Tokyo University discovered something that should be carved into stone. The human brain cannot distinguish between the anticipation of pleasure and pleasure itself. Read that again. The waiting is the having. The hunger is the feast. The maybe is the yes, extended into infinity, purified of disappointment's possibility. But here's where it becomes an art form. The master of maybe doesn't say no. No is closure, and closure is a kind of death. The master says, not now. We'll see. Someday, when the time is right. Each deflection is a deposit in an emotional bank account that pays interest in obsession. She starts planning her life around your maybes. She dresses for your perhaps. She breathes in the rhythm of your soon. There's a couple in Stockholm who've been about to get married for 23 years. The wedding is always 6 months away. The venue changes, the season shifts, but the distance remains constant. They have a daughter who's 21, raised on the promise of her parents' upcoming wedding. She recently got engaged and married within 3 months. When asked why the rush, she said, "I've seen what forever looks like. I preferred finite." Kierkegaard, always Kierkegaard when we talk about anguish, wrote that anxiety is the dizziness of freedom. But he missed something crucial. We're not dizzy from too many choices. We're drunk on the choice we never have to make. Watch what happens when you tell her, "I'm thinking about taking you somewhere special." Not "I'm taking you," that's a contract. Not "would you like to go?" That's a question requiring an answer, but thinking about. That's a maybe wrapped in a maybe, a Russian doll of possibility that she'll open in her mind 1,000 times before you ever mention it again. The cruelest thing? She knows. Women aren't victims of maybe. They're co-conspirators. They've been trained since birth in the art of "we'll see," by fathers who promised ponies, by first loves who promised forever, by mirrors that promised beauty if they just waited a little longer. They recognize the fever because they've been patients and nurses both. I knew a woman in Berlin who kept a diary of maybes. Every uncertain promise, every "let's do that sometime," every "we should really." She had 17 volumes by the time she died. Her daughter found them, thought they were records of plans that fell through. But no. Reading closer, she realized her mother had preferred them this way. The maybes were more perfect than any yes could have been. Completed, they would have become memories. Uncompleted, they remained dreams. There's a text conversation happening right now, in 10 million phones simultaneously. Want to do something this weekend? Maybe. I'll let you know. And in that space between question and answer, between hope and confirmation, entire civilizations rise and fall. He's already planning what to wear. She's already decided she won't go, but neither will admit it, because admission would end the game. And the game is all we have between us and the void. The evolutionary biologists call this optimal foraging theory. The idea that animals will spend energy pursuing food only if the probability of success multiplied by the reward exceeds the cost. But humans broke the equation. We discovered that the pursuit itself could be the reward. That maybe was more nutritious than yes. Here's a question that will haunt you. What if she says yes? What if all the maybes suddenly crystallize into definitely? What if Saturday becomes every Saturday, and thinking about you becomes "good morning, honey," and the fever breaks? What then? Who are you without your hunger? What's left when the mystery dissolves into grocery lists and joint checking accounts? There's a bar in Prague where they serve a cocktail called Perhaps. The recipe changes every night. You never know what you're ordering, Half the time it's sublime, half the time it's undrinkable. The regulars order nothing else. When tourists ask what's in it, the bartender says, maybe vodka, maybe whiskey, maybe nothing at all. The tourists order beer. The regulars understand. Certainty is for people who've given up on magic. So here's my dare. You gorgeous disaster suspended in your own uncertain light. Next time someone offers you a maybe, don't push for yes or no. Sit in it. Marinate in it. Build a house in it and pay rent in dreams. Because the moment you know for sure, the moment maybe becomes definitely, something dies. And that something might be the only thing keeping you alive. What blooms in darkness doesn't need your light to survive. Come closer, closer still, until you can smell the wax of burned-out candles and taste the copper of old pennies in fountains where wishes went to die. I'm going to tell you the final secret, the one that makes all the others obsolete. In the mountains of Tibet, there's a flower that blooms once every 7 years, and only in complete darkness. The monks call it the ghost orchid of letting go, and it's uglier than death, twisted like arthritic fingers, colorless as forgotten names. Collectors have offered millions for a single specimen. But here's the thing. The moment you shine a light on it, even candlelight, even moonlight, it dissolves into dust. It exists only as long as you're willing not to see it. This is the final insight. Everything you've been doing, the calculated distance, the managed attention, the perfect crimes, the manufactured maybes, it's all been to avoid confronting the most terrifying truth of all. You don't need her to need you. You need you. And that need, that bottomless hunger for your own presence, is the void you've been trying to fill with her uncertainty. Let me tell you what happens when the game ends. There's a man in Lisbon who spent 15 years perfecting the art we've been discussing. He could make any woman obsess over him with surgical precision. 3-day silences, cryptic messages, calculated appearances and disappearances. He had it down to mathematical formulas, emotional algorithms. Then, one Tuesday in March, something snapped. Not broke, snapped back into place, like a dislocated shoulder finding its socket. He saw himself clearly. A 43-year-old man treating love like a chess match against opponents who didn't know they were playing. He deleted all his dating apps, not dramatically, just quietly, like taking out the trash. He stopped responding to the 17 women orbiting his manufactured mystery, and in that silence, not strategic silence, but real silence, he heard something he'd been drowning out for decades, the sound of his own life, happening without him. The withdrawals were hideous. Not from them, from the game itself. His hands would shake when his phone didn't buzz. He'd write texts to no one, just to feel the muscle memory of seduction. He learned to make bread instead. Terrible bread at first, dense as grief, but slowly, loaf by loaf, something shifted. He wasn't performing anymore. He was just kneading dough at 4 a.m., flour under his fingernails, finally present in his own skin. Here's what the love gurus won't tell you, because it's bad for business. The hunger you're creating in her, you're the one who's starving. Every game you play is a meal you're not eating. Every strategic absence is you, absent from your own life. Schopenhauer wrote, "A man can do what he wants, but not want what he wants." But even the old pessimist missed the final turn of the screw. We've become so good at making others want us that we've forgotten we exist outside of being wanted. A 2025 study from the Sorbonne's Department of Emotional Archaeology found something that should be painted on every bathroom mirror. People who regularly practice emotional withholding in relationships show decreased activity in the brain regions associated with self-recognition. They literally lose the ability to see themselves except through the lens of how others might see them. They become mirrors, reflecting mirrors, infinite regression with no original image. There's a woman in Kyoto who runs a tea house where no one speaks, not a word. For 3 hours, you sit with strangers in absolute silence, drinking tea that tastes like rain. The waiting list is 2 years long. When asked why people come, she writes on a piece of paper, to remember who they were before they learned to perform themselves. You see, we've been talking about keeping her hooked, but we're the junkies. Addicted to the reflection of our mystery in her eyes. Addicted to the power of withholding. Addicted to the story where we're the enigmatic protagonist everyone's trying to solve. But what happens when you realize you're not the main character? You're the plot device? The obstacle? The thing keeping everyone, including yourself, from the real story. I met a couple in Amsterdam last spring, both in their 70s. They'd found each other after decades of failed marriages, games, strategies. She said something that haunted me. We're too tired to be interesting. Thank God. Now we can finally be real. They hold hands like teenagers, not because it's romantic, but because they might fall without each other. Their love isn't a fever or a game or a dance. It's just Tuesday, and they're both still here, and that's enough. That's everything. The truth, the nauseating, liberating, terrible truth, is this. The person you could be if you stopped managing everyone's hunger. That person might be ordinary, might be boring, might be someone who reads the same book 17 times and cries at commercials and eats cereal for dinner. Might be someone who loves without strategy, needs without manipulation, exists without audience. And that person, that ordinary, unstrategic, unguarded person, might be the only one worth being. There's a message in your drafts right now. The one you've written and rewritten. The honest one. The one that says what you actually feel without calculation or game theory. You know the one. It probably starts with, "I've been thinking," or "the truth is." You won't send it. You'll delete it and send something clever instead, something that maintains the dance, keeps the hunger alive, preserves the mystery. But imagine, just for one moment of stupid bravery, what would happen if you pressed send? If you let the game die? If you stopped feeding her hunger and finally fed your own? Not with another person's attention or desire or uncertainty, but with the radical act of being present in your own life, even if that life is ordinary, even if you're ordinary, even if love is ordinary. The ghost orchid in Tibet? It's ugly because it doesn't need to be beautiful. It blooms in darkness because it doesn't need to be seen. It exists for itself, by itself, as itself. And maybe, not the fever maybe, but the quiet maybe, that's the only freedom there is. To bloom unseen, to exist without audience, to love without strategy, to be human without the exhausting effort of being fascinating. But you won't do it, will you? You'll read this, feel something shift in your chest like a key turning in a lock you forgot existed, and then you'll go back to the game. Because the game is safer than the alternative. Being real, being seen, being here, being now, being you. So here's my final question, you beautiful disaster at the end of all these words. What if the art of keeping her hooked is killing the artist? What if you let her go, really let her go, not as strategy, but as surrender? Who would you be if nobody was watching? Who would you be if you were free?